At 6 in the morning, on July 27, 1909, a signal lamp began flashing across the sea. The steamship SS Waratah was overtaking another vessel off the eastern coast of South Africa. Through Morse code, the two ships exchanged their names and destinations. Waratah was heading for Cape Town. There was no distress signal, no warning. Nothing suggested that 211 people were moving toward danger. 3.5 hours later, Waratah disappeared beyond the horizon. No confirmed message from her was ever received again. Waratah was the new flagship of the Blue Anchor Line. She was built to carry passengers and Australian cargo between Britain, South Africa, and Australia. She had entered service less than a year earlier. Her steel hull was divided by watertight compartments, and she was considered a modern passenger liner. But Waratah carried one important limitation. She had no wireless radio. In 1909, shipboard radio was still spreading across merchant fleets. Waratah communicated at sea through flags and signal lamps. If something happened beyond visual range, there was no radio operator who could send a distress call into the darkness. On the evening of July 26th, Waratah left Durban for Cape Town, the next stage of her return voyage to Europe. On board were 92 passengers and 119 crew members. Her holds carried wool, food, metal, and other Australian exports. The coast ahead was familiar to Captain Joshua Ilbery. He had spent decades sailing the route. Yet the waters south of Durban could become dangerous when powerful winds met the south-flowing Agulhas Current. When wind and current moved against each other, the sea could rise quickly into steep and violent waves. Before Waratah departed Durban, one passenger had already decided to leave the ship. Claude Sawyer, an engineer, had booked passage as far as Cape Town. During the voyage, he became troubled by the way Waratah rolled. Witnesses later described a peculiar motion. The ship could lean to one side, pause, and appear slow to return upright. Sawyer disembarked at Durban. His decision later became one of the most repeated details in the story. But it was not proof that Waratah was doomed. Other passengers considered the vessel comfortable. Inspectors had approved her, and her builders defended the design. The official inquiry would later hear conflicting testimony about whether Waratah was dangerously unstable. At sea, uncertainty can appear harmless until the moment it is not. Before dawn on July 27th, the cargo steamer Clan MacIntyre saw a large passenger ship approaching from behind. Waratah was moving faster. By about 6 o'clock in the morning, she had drawn close enough for the vessels to communicate by signal lamp. Flashes of light crossed the water between the two bridges. The exchange was routine. The ships identified themselves. They stated where they were bound. Then they exchanged ordinary good wishes for the voyage. Nothing about the message sounded final. Waratah continued ahead at approximately 13 knots. Those aboard Clan MacIntyre watched her grow smaller as she moved toward the southwest. At about 9:30 in the morning, she passed beyond the horizon near the mouth of the Mbashe River. That was the last confirmed sighting of SS Waratah. Later reports introduced other possibilities. The steamship Harlow reported seeing a distant vessel producing unusually heavy smoke. Those watching from Harlow then described two bright flashes before the distant light disappeared. That night, another passenger ship named Guelph attempted to communicate with an unidentified vessel during poor visibility. An officer aboard Guelph believed that the final letters of the other ship's name might have been the letters T-A-H, but the signal was weak. the vessel was never positively identified. Neither report could be confirmed as Waratah. The historical record therefore returns to the morning exchange with Clan MacIntyre, a name, a destination, and a polite farewell sent as flashes across the open water. After Waratah vanished from sight, the weather deteriorated. Clan MacIntyre later entered seas that her officers described as exceptionally severe. Wind pushed against the Agulhas current, raising enormous waves. Her captain said they were among the worst conditions he had experienced along that coast. Waratah was expected to arrive in Cape Town on July 29th. She did not arrive. At first, officials did not assume that she had sunk. Ships could be delayed by engine trouble, steering failure, damaged equipment, or severe weather. A disabled liner might drift for days before being discovered. Because Waratah had no wireless radio, her silence alone did not prove that a disaster had occurred. But other vessels completed the same route without finding her. Search ships moved along the coastline. The Royal Navy joined the effort. Later expeditions crossed thousands of nautical miles into the southern Indian Ocean. Searchers followed the possibility that Waratah had lost power and drifted far away from the normal shipping lanes. They found no confirmed lifeboat, no verified wreckage, no message in a bottle, and no location where the 211 people aboard could be found. In London, the Board of Trade opened an official inquiry. Without survivors and without a wreck, investigators had to reconstruct the condition of the ship through documents and memories. They examined loading plans, inspection records, company correspondence, and testimony from people who had traveled aboard Waratah during earlier voyages. Some witnesses described an uncomfortable and unusual rolling motion. Others said the ship had behaved normally. The builders insisted that Waratah had been properly designed. Questions were raised about cargo distribution, ballast, the height of the upper decks, and the extreme weather that crossed the region. The inquiry concluded that Waratah had most likely been lost during severe weather, possibly after capsizing, but it could not establish the exact sequence of events. Later, theories suggested a coal fire, an explosion, structural failure, shifting cargo, or a single overwhelming wave. Modern researchers have also examined the interaction between storms, the Agulhas current, and the deep underwater terrain farther south. Each theory attempts to fill the same empty space. There is still no confirmed wreck to answer the questions. Waratah was officially listed as missing by Lloyd's in December 1909. The Blue Anchor Line never recovered from the consequences of the disappearance. Relatives of those aboard helped finance further searches. Decades later, wreck hunters returned with sonar equipment and diving technology. At one point, searchers discovered a wreck that appeared to match the lost liner. When divers finally examined it, the wreck belonged to another ship. More than a century after the disappearance, Waratah may remain somewhere off the coast of southern Africa, or in deeper water, beyond the areas where searchers expected her to be. What remains in the archive is not a distress call. It is something quieter. A routine exchange between two ships at sunrise. Waratah identified herself. She stated where she was going. Then her signal lamp went dark, and the ship continued beyond the horizon. The last confirmed message did not say that anything was wrong. It only said who they were and where they expected to arrive.